What kind of woman asks the man she claims to love to sign a behavior agreement before marriage? A document so strange, so specific, so quietly invasive that even his closest friends asked him whether he understood what he was getting himself into. What kind of partner slides a sealed envelope across a kitchen counter with a smile that doesn't quite match the tension in her voice? And what kind of future duchess begins her royal journey with a secret clause that wasn't about money, wasn't about cheating, and wasn't about assets, but something far more personal, far more controlling, and far more revealing? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Tonight, we're going deeper than the headlines, deeper than the gossip, deeper than the carefully polished PR stories. Because for the first time, Meghan Markle's ex-husband, Trevor Engelson, is speaking out, not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with a heavy truth he has carried for more than a decade. A truth he says he stayed silent about for too long. A truth that only now, with everything that has happened, the royal split, the Netflix deals, the Oprah interview, the endless controversies, finally makes sense to him. And what he reveals is the part Meghan Markle never thought would surface. Picture this. Years before the crowns, before the titles, before the global headlines, Trevor sits alone in his apartment. The room feels smaller than usual. A soft glow from a kitchen bulb spills over scattered papers, scripts, contracts, old photographs. And sitting right there in the middle of the table is the same document he once tried to ignore. The same document he signed even though it made his throat tighten. The same document friends told him was a red flag the size of California. He reads it again, this time slowly, and every line sinks into him like a truth he refused to acknowledge back then. This wasn't a prenup. This wasn't a financial safeguard. This wasn't about divorce or property or who gets the toaster. This was something else. Maybe you've been in love. Maybe you've ignored a red flag because the person standing across from you felt like the future you always wanted. Maybe you convinced yourself that strange things were normal because you wanted the relationship to work. And maybe, just like Trevor, you found yourself defending the indefensible. Let's be honest. When you're in love, you don't want to see what scares you. Trevor didn't see it either. Not at first. Back then, Meghan was charismatic, ambitious, brilliant at making people feel like they were part of her inner circle. She was funny, charming, radiant. And Trevor loved her. Truly. He believed in her dreams. He believed in her talent. He believed in her future. But he didn't know he was stepping into a relationship with rules. Not suggestions. Not expectations. Rules. Rules he didn't write. Rules he didn't fully understand. Rules she insisted were necessary for the life she wanted. What life was that? What did she already know she was preparing for? What did she see in herself that required this level of control from the very beginning? These are the questions that haunted Trevor long after the marriage ended. These are the questions he wishes he had asked sooner. These are the questions that, according to him, reveal who Meghan Markle always intended to become. And here's the twist. He didn't speak then. He didn't fight it. He didn't push back. Because when someone looks you in the eye and tells you they love you, you want to believe them. So he signed. That moment, his pen pressing against paper, became the earliest chapter in a story he didn't realize he was living. A story where Meghan set the terms, defined the roles, and shaped the narrative. You may wonder, what could possibly be inside a pre-marriage agreement that shocked Trevor and made his friends question everything? Why would Meghan want such a thing? And how did it tie into the woman she later became on the world stage? The truth is layered, complex, and deeply uncomfortable. But before we unravel the agreement itself, the strange clauses, the expectations, the behavioral demands, we need to understand the world surrounding it. The emotional terrain, the way Meghan moved through her early relationships, the way she positioned herself as someone destined for more, always more. Because the moment that envelope appeared, everything shifted. It wasn't the envelope that scared Trevor. It was her tone. Soft, polished, almost rehearsed. Like she had practiced this conversation in her mind over and over, waiting for the exact moment when Trevor was too in love to question it. She smiled. He tried to smile back. And in that tiny, fragile moment, their engagement became something else. Something controlled. Something monitored. Something quietly scripted. And Trevor wasn't the only one who noticed. Friends who had never interfered before suddenly found themselves exchanging looks across dinner tables. A cousin asked him whether he felt happy or just obligated. A co-worker whispered, "Are you sure about this? It doesn't feel right." But Trevor brushed it off. "People don't understand her," he said. "She's under pressure. She's just being careful about her future." Careful. Is that what it was? Or was she crafting a plan? Because here's the detail that will matter later. The agreement did not mention money once. Not once. Instead, it focused entirely on conduct, image, communication, and personal boundaries that went in one direction, all toward Meghan. And it didn't stop at the agreement. This is the part Trevor says he never saw coming. The part that didn't make sense then, but makes perfect sense now. The part where, after he signed the first document, Meghan introduced something even more unsettling, what Trevor calls the silence clause. But we'll get to that. Tonight is not about vilifying Meghan or painting Trevor as perfect. It's about breaking open the box of a relationship that, for years, has been publicly portrayed as simple, young lovers who grew apart. A quick divorce. A clean split. But that was never the truth. And Trevor now says he regrets staying quiet. Silence protects the wrong people, he admitted recently. And he won't be silent anymore. So why now? Why speak out after all these years? Why open up about the agreements, the strange requests, the things he once tried to bury? Because the patterns he sees today, the control, the narrative management, the way relationships are structured around image rather than intimacy, mirror exactly what he lived years before the world even knew Meghan's name. And for the first time, he believes people might finally understand. Maybe this has happened to you. Maybe you've been with someone who turned love into obligation, who masked control as support, who framed monitoring as caring, who demanded that you become smaller so their star could rise. Maybe this story isn't just about Meghan and Trevor. Maybe it's about relationships that look perfect from the outside but feel suffocating on the inside. Because the way Meghan handled her marriage, according to Trevor, wasn't an accident. It was a blueprint, a system, a strategy. And tonight, we're going to walk through that blueprint step by step. The dinner parties, the whispered comments, the late-night emails she thought he would never see, the meticulous image planning, the pressure to conform, the boundaries that tightened over time. The moment Trevor realized he wasn't her partner, he was a piece of her plan. Everything you're about to hear connects. Everything has a purpose. And everything adds up to the moment Trevor finally breaks his silence. But before we can understand why Meghan introduced the first agreement, before we explore the clauses that left Trevor uneasy, before we reveal the emotional manipulation that followed, we have to go back to the moment everything changed. It starts with a dinner, a celebration, a small, intimate moment that should have been filled with love, but ended with a sealed envelope that would crack the foundation of their relationship. Because inside that envelope wasn't just a document. It was a warning, and Trevor didn't see it. Not yet. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the person you love suddenly changes in front of you? Not in a dramatic explosion, not in an obvious argument, but in one subtle, silent moment. A shift so small that you almost miss it, yet so powerful that it rewrites everything you believed about your relationship. What if the woman you were planning to marry, the woman whose smile made you forget your worries, suddenly looked at you in a way that didn't feel familiar, but calculated? That night, Trevor Engelson didn't realize he was witnessing the real Meghan Markle emerge. Not the charming actress, not the witty, lovable partner, not the woman who made him believe he had found the one, but the Meghan who lived beneath the polished surface. And it all happened during what should have been one of the happiest evenings of his life. It was a warm night in Los Angeles. They had just finalized the engagement. Wine glasses clinked. Friends toasted. Everyone laughed at stories about how Trevor and Meghan met. People kept saying things like, "You two are perfect," and "You're such a beautiful couple." And for most of the evening, Trevor believed them. He believed in the picture they painted. He believed he and Meghan were standing at the start of something real. But even then, he sensed something off. Ever felt it? That moment when you're at a celebration, smiling, participating, but a small part of your mind whispers that something is wrong? Something is about to shift? Something under the surface is waiting to break through? That's the feeling Trevor had that night. Meghan wasn't fully present. She was smiling, yes, laughing in all the right places, holding Trevor's arm like a woman proud to show off her fiancé. But her eyes kept drifting, watching people, observing reactions. clocking the way others looked at her. It was as if she wasn't celebrating the engagement. She was studying it, analyzing it, preparing for something. Trevor didn't understand it then. He thought she was overwhelmed, nervous, maybe tired from work. He brushed it off as typical pre-wedding jitters. Because most people don't jump to the conclusion that their partner is strategizing. But Meghan was. At one point, his best friend leaned in and whispered, "Is she okay? She looks intense tonight." Trevor laughed it off. "She's fine," he said. "Just tired." But his friend gave him a long, slow look. The kind of look men give each other when they want to say more, but hold back out of respect. Maybe Trevor should have asked, "Why? What did you notice?" But he didn't. He didn't want to hear an answer. And so the night went on. Hours later, when the guests finally left and the dishes were piled in the sink, Trevor turned around and saw Meghan standing completely still in the middle of the living room. She wasn't smiling now. She wasn't affectionate. She wasn't glowing the way brides often glow. She was thinking, calculating. When she noticed Trevor watching her, she quickly softened her expression, but for a split second, just one, he saw her without the smile. And that was the moment everything changed. "Are you okay, Meg?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said with a tone that felt final. Not reassuring, not warm, just final. She picked up her purse from the couch. A simple action, unremarkable, nothing that should have triggered a warning in Trevor's mind. But when she reached in and pulled out that sealed white envelope, the one she later slid across the table like it was a business contract, that's when Trevor felt a twist in his stomach. A twist he ignored. You ignore the first twist because you want to believe the best. You ignore the second because you're already invested. You ignore the third because you don't want to admit something is wrong. Trevor was already at twist number 2. He followed her into the kitchen. The light overhead flickered slightly, a bulb that needed replacing. The room felt too quiet. The kind of quiet where your heartbeat feels loud. Meghan didn't sit down. She didn't explain herself. She just placed the envelope on the table with 2 fingers and looked at Trevor as if she was preparing for a negotiation. "We need to talk," she said. Those 4 words can either mean intimacy or trouble. Tonight, they meant trouble. Trevor tried to read her expression. She wasn't angry. She wasn't sad. She wasn't even nervous. She was controlled. She finally sat down, folded her hands, and stared at the envelope before looking at him. "This is something I've been thinking about for a while," she said. "I think it's necessary. For our future. Not our marriage. Not our love. Not our growth. Our future. As if the relationship were a project. A brand. A long-term investment." Trevor felt the unease again, but he forced a smile. "What is it?" he asked. Meghan didn't answer. Instead, she tapped the envelope lightly. Not urgently. Not nervously. More like someone signaling the start of something important. "I need you to read it," she said. "And I need you to take it seriously." There it was again, that tone. Not soft. Not romantic. Not emotional. Authoritative. And that's when Trevor noticed something he had never seen before. Meghan's demeanor had changed entirely. It was as if she had stepped into a role. A new version of herself. A version more focused on control than connection. He opened the envelope slowly. The sound of paper tearing felt loud in the stillness of the kitchen. Inside was a neatly typed document, several pages stapled together. No letterhead. No logo. No legal branding. Just lines of instructions, expectations, and obligations. Rules. His mind tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Behavioral expectations. Communication guidelines. Emotional accountability. Conflict protocols. Image protection clauses. And all of it framed as necessary for the life she envisioned. Trevor blinked. What is this?" "It's something that will make our marriage stronger," Meghan said calmly. "Stronger?" he repeated, still trying to absorb the words. "Meg, these aren't normal." She tilted her head. "They're healthy boundaries." "No," he said quietly. "They're rules." For a moment, the mask slipped. Her eyes hardened. Her shoulders stiffened. Her jaw tightened. And then, just as quickly, she smiled again. "It's not a big deal," she said. "I just want us to be aligned." Aligned. That word struck him harder than the document itself. Aligned wasn't a word couples used. It was a word executives used. It was a word people used in business meetings. It was a word that implied structure, hierarchy, direction. "Did you write this yourself?" he asked. She hesitated. Trevor caught it. A tiny flicker of hesitation that told him the truth before she opened her mouth. "It's something I put together," she said. "Not the whole truth. Not even close." But at the time, Trevor let it go. Because he wanted peace. Because he wanted love. Because he wanted to believe that Meghan had good intentions. But there was something else too. He was afraid of losing her. Afraid that if he pushed back, if he questioned her, if he challenged the thing she clearly valued so deeply, he would trigger an argument he wasn't prepared for. That fear, that quiet, creeping fear, was something Meghan sensed. And from that moment on, she used it. The rest of the night blurred together. Trevor nodded along, pretending to understand, pretending to accept her words, pretending everything was fine. But inside, something had cracked. He didn't fully understand the document. He didn't understand why she wanted it. He didn't understand why she presented it now. But he understood one thing. Something was changing. Meghan wasn't the woman he thought she was. Or maybe she always was this woman, and he was only just now seeing it. And he was right. Because what came after this moment? The next rule, the next demand, the next level of control, would make this envelope look harmless compared to what was coming. But all of that starts with the same moment. The subtle shift in Meghan's demeanor. The sealed envelope. The strange document. And the uneasy feeling Trevor could no longer ignore. Because that night was only the beginning. And what Meghan introduced next would make Trevor question everything he thought he knew about their relationship. And about her. The envelope shouldn't have meant anything. It was small, white, ordinary. The kind of envelope people use for birthday cards or dinner receipts. The kind you throw away without thinking. But this one, this simple, unassuming envelope, would become the opening chapter of what Trevor later described as the most confusing emotional maze of my life. What would you do if your partner handed you a sealed document and said it was necessary for your future? Would you laugh? Panic? Run? Or would you, like Trevor, push down the discomfort until your chest felt tight and convince yourself you were overreacting? Because that's what love does. It makes you override your instincts. When Trevor went to bed that night, he barely slept. His mind spiraled. He kept replaying the moment Meghan slid the envelope across the kitchen table. The way she said, "We need to talk." The determined way she watched him open it. The faint smile that flashed across her face. Not warm, not excited, but satisfied. Satisfied that the moment had arrived. He didn't realize it then, but Meghan had been preparing this for weeks. Maybe months. Trevor would later recall small signs. Little clues that didn't make sense at the time. Her sudden obsession with routines. Her talk about alignment. Her comments about the entertainment industry punishing disorganization. Her fixation on communication boundaries. Her insistence on being intentional. At first, he thought it was all self-help language. Los Angeles is full of people reading motivational books and talking about manifesting their futures. He thought Meghan was simply adopting those ideas. But this wasn't self-help. This was structure. Control. A system she believed she needed. The envelope was just the first physical piece of that system. The next morning, Trevor made coffee, sat at the counter, and stared at the document again. He read the first page 3 times, then a fourth. The words didn't soften. They didn't become less jarring. In fact, they felt sharper. Personal conduct agreement. Partnership accountability framework. Mutual standards for a successful marriage. The titles were vague, but the content wasn't. He reached the section labeled Communication Expectations, and that's when he felt his breath hitch. According to the document, they were to have weekly check-ins. Mandatory. Every Sunday night. In those check-ins, Trevor would be expected to review any conflicts, disclose any negative emotions, explain misunderstandings, commit to improved behavior. Improved behavior. Not mutual understanding. Not resolving issues. Improved behavior. There was no section outlining what Meghan would improve. Not one. But the most unsettling part? A line that read, "I expect consistency in emotional presentation." What did that even mean? How does one present emotions consistently? Trevor sat back, rubbing his forehead. Was this seriously happening? It wasn't that Trevor feared accountability. He wasn't afraid of communication. He wasn't afraid of commitment. He was afraid of the imbalance. Afraid that this wasn't about love, it was about management. Trevor wasn't a project, but Meghan was treating him like one. Around 10 a.m., Meghan walked into the kitchen. Beautiful as always, perfectly put together even in sweatpants. She leaned over to kiss him, but Trevor didn't move right away. She noticed. "You read it," she said. "Yeah," he replied quietly. "And?" She asked it the same way a boss asks an employee whether they've finished a task. Trevor swallowed. "Meg, it's a lot." "It's reasonable," she countered, almost instantly. "I don't see what's so overwhelming." "It feels formal," he said. "It feels like something a therapist or a corporate coach would write. It doesn't feel like us." "Because you're thinking emotionally," Meghan said, walking past him to pour coffee. That line hit him harder than the document. Since when was thinking emotionally a flaw in a relationship? "You want our marriage to work, right?" she asked. "Of course." "Then we need structure," Meghan said. "Successful people have structure. Successful relationships have structure." Trevor opened his mouth, then closed it. What argument could he make without appearing disorganized, uncommitted, or, worst of all in Meghan's eyes, weak? Because Meghan respected strength. She admired power. She admired people who moved through life with a plan. And Trevor, soft-hearted, emotional, creative, feared disappointing her. "Okay," he finally said. "But some of these expectations feel one-sided." Meghan turned to face him fully. "Trevor, I'm the one whose life is going to get complicated. I'm the one who has the public-facing role. I'm the one building something. You know that." And there it was. The first seed of something Trevor would later look back on with painful clarity. Meghan saw herself as the rising star. Trevor was the supporting character. She never said it outright. She didn't need to. It was in her posture, her tone, her insistence that his role was to support her journey. "Think of this as a foundation," she said. "A way to keep us aligned so we don't drift apart." Drift apart. That phrase stuck with him. Drift apart suggests an accident. But Meghan's tone suggested prevention, control, prediction. Was she already anticipating distance? Trevor pushed the thought away. Meghan wasn't cold, he told himself. She wasn't calculating. She was ambitious and organized. This was just how she operated. She wanted things spelled out. She wanted clarity. She wanted transparency, right? But later, in private, he admitted to a friend, "Man, it felt like I was signing up for a job. A job with performance expectations. A job with review sessions. A job with a checklist of approved behaviors." And yet, he signed anyway. Because when Meghan leaned in, touched his cheek, and whispered, "I just want us to succeed," Trevor felt that familiar pull, the desire to keep the peace, to keep the relationship smooth, to keep her happy. He convinced himself that maybe this was normal. Maybe every relationship has strange moments. Maybe their dynamic was simply unique. Maybe he was being dramatic. So he pushed his discomfort down, again. But discomfort doesn't disappear. It waits. It grows. It evolves. And that envelope, the first document, opened a door Trevor never managed to close again. Over the next few weeks, things changed. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Quietly. Meghan began to reference the agreement frequently. "We should remember our communication commitment. This is why structure matters. We talked about emotional consistency. We agreed on conflict protocols. Little reminders. Little nudges. Little reinforcements. But the one that bothered Trevor the most was, we need to stay aligned. Aligned. As if they were business partners. Not lovers. Not a couple. Aligned." Trevor told himself it was temporary. A phase. Something she would ease up on once the wedding stress passed. But the stress didn't pass. The structure didn't ease. The reminders didn't stop. And the envelope, the physical symbol of their shifting dynamic, stayed in the kitchen drawer like a silent witness to everything that came next. Then one night, about 2 weeks after the envelope incident, Meghan approached Trevor with a different tone. Not authoritative. Not assertive. Not demanding. Soft. Quiet. Almost affectionate. "Can we talk?" she asked. Trevor froze. Not again, he thought. Another envelope? Another agreement? Another rule? But this time, she sat beside him on the couch, folded her legs, and leaned her head on his shoulder. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "Something important." He listened. "I want to make sure we protect our relationship," she continued. "And the best way to protect something is to prevent unnecessary damage." Trevor nodded. "Okay, so I've been working on something else," she said. His stomach dropped. She reached into her bag. He braced for another envelope. But instead, she pulled out a single sheet of paper. Just one, folded neatly. perfectly crisp, prepared in advance. "Meg," he whispered, "what is it?" "This," she said softly, "is the silence clause." Trevor blinked. "The what?" "It's nothing dramatic," she said quickly. "Just a simple guideline. A promise. Something to keep us safe." Safe. Why did the word safe suddenly feel threatening? What does it say?" Trevor asked. Meghan placed the paper in his hand. His fingers trembled, not because the paper was frightening, but because he already knew, deep down, that something inside him was about to change again. And he was right, because what was written on that single sheet of paper would become the next step in Meghan's system. The system Trevor didn't yet understand. The system he soon wouldn't be able to escape. Because inside that folded sheet wasn't just a guideline. It was a warning, a boundary, a demand for silence that suggested Meghan already anticipated something going wrong, something she wanted to control, something she never wanted Trevor to talk about. But the real shock? The silence clause wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Because what Meghan introduced after that would make the first envelope look harmless in comparison. There are moments in life when you learn something about a person that you can never unlearn. Moments that split your perception in two. Who you thought they were, and who they really are. For Trevor Engelson, that moment came when he unfolded Meghan Markle's second document, what he would later call the real contract, the one she didn't bother dressing up behind vague language or fake therapeutic jargon. The silence clause was unsettling, yes, but what she presented next, it was something else entirely. If the first document was strange, this one was alarming. It didn't feel like a partnership. It felt like ownership, like management, like a blueprint for a marriage where the balance of power was predetermined, and Trevor was not the one holding it. But before we expose every line, every expectation, every rule Meghan demanded, we need to return to the exact moment it happened. Because the way Meghan delivered this second agreement says more about her mindset than the agreement itself. It was late. The living room lights were dim. Trevor had just finished reading the silence clause. His heart heavy, his mind foggy with confusion. Meghan sat beside him, watching him not with affection, but with anticipation. The way someone waits for a verdict. "Well?" she asked. Trevor didn't answer right away. He felt trapped, boxed in, pressured into being the version of himself she had predetermined. But instead of confronting her, he fell back on the instinct that had carried him through the last few weeks. Avoid conflict. Keep peace. Don't upset her. "It's a lot," he finally said. "It's not a big deal," she replied sharply. "It's just about respecting each other, protecting each other." But Trevor saw through it, just barely. The silence clause didn't protect them. It protected her. Still, he didn't want to fight. So he nodded, weakly, hesitantly, quietly. And that was all she needed. Because Meghan didn't want agreement. She wanted obedience. She leaned forward, reached under the coffee table, and pulled out a different folder. Not a flimsy envelope this time. A thick, professional, carefully organized folder. Trevor froze. "Meg, what is that?" "This," she said calmly, laying it on the table, "is the expectations agreement." Expectations agreement. The words repeated in Trevor's head like an alarm he couldn't shut off. He didn't touch it, didn't open it, didn't want to. But Meghan pushed it toward him anyway. "It's nothing crazy," she insisted. "Just things we both need to commit to if we want this marriage to succeed." Both. She used the word both. But as he would soon learn, both was a performance. A smokescreen. A way to make the agreement look mutual when, in reality, it was entirely one-sided. Trevor finally opened the folder. 3 typed pages. Dense. Structured. No soft language this time. The first line punched him in the chest. "Trevor shall commit to supporting all professional and personal endeavors without objection, delay, or emotional disruption." Without objection. Without emotional disruption. Not support. Compliance. He kept reading. "Trevor shall maintain consistency in emotional expression to prevent miscommunication, career disruption, or external conflict." There it was again. Emotional consistency. As if Meghan expected Trevor to perform a role, not live a life. He turned the page. "Trevor shall not engage in conversations, behaviors, or decisions that interfere with Meghan's career trajectory unless mutually scheduled and approved." Scheduled? Approved? What was he, her employee? Trevor's head spun. This wasn't about marriage. This wasn't about love. This was about managing him like a variable in her life. And the deeper he read, the worse it got. Summary logs of disagreements. Meghan approved social boundaries. Restrictions on who Trevor could confide in. Guidelines for public behavior. But the paragraph that made his skin crawl said, Trevor shall ensure that personal sacrifices are made without resentment, hesitation, or displays of negativity. Personal sacrifices. Made cheerfully. Without hesitation. Without resentment. Who writes something like that? This wasn't self-help language. This wasn't therapy talk. This wasn't relationship communication. This was control. Trevor looked up, his face pale. Meg, this isn't normal. She crossed her arms. Normal is subjective. What matters is what works for us. But this doesn't feel mutual, he said. It is, she snapped. You're just reacting emotionally instead of logically. Emotionally. That word again. She used it like an insult. Trevor's brain was spinning. Meg, this feels like a job description. Like you're telling me how I'm supposed to act, think, respond. That's because I know where my life is going, she said, cutting him off. I can't afford chaos. I need stability. I need a partner who understands the bigger picture. What bigger picture? He asked. She hesitated. And that hesitation told Trevor more than her words ever could. Meghan already had a plan, not just for her career. For her life. For her image. For her future. And Trevor wasn't a partner in that plan. He was an accessory. A piece. A buffer. A support beam holding up her ambition. Meg, he whispered, why is all of this necessary? Because, she said firmly, if we don't set expectations now, we'll fall apart later. I've seen it happen. I've felt it happen. This wasn't about them. This was about her past, her fears, her desire to maintain perfect control at all times. Trevor kept flipping through the pages, each line more unbalanced than the last. And the entire time, Meghan watched him with a look that terrified him, not because she was angry, but because she was determined. Determined that he accept it. Determined that he sign. Determined that he comply. He reached the final page. A place for a signature. His, not hers. Meg, you didn't sign. Because it's not my agreement, she said. It's yours. What does that mean? It means, she said slowly, these are your commitments. Your expectations. Your responsibilities. Trevor stared at her. And what about your responsibilities? She blinked, as if she genuinely didn't understand the question. My responsibility is to succeed, she said. For both of us. Trevor felt something cold in his chest. That's not how marriages work, he said quietly. That's how ours will, she said. Silence stretched between them like a crack in the foundation of their relationship. Trevor could feel the shift. He could feel the future pressing in, heavy, suffocating. He wanted to walk away. He wanted to say no. He wanted to tear the papers in half. But instead, he whispered, I need time. Meghan's reaction was immediate. Her smile faded. Her posture stiffened. Her eyes darkened. Time for what? To think, Trevor said. This is a lot. It's not a lot, she said sharply. It's basic. It's simple. It's exactly what we need. Meg. No, she said, standing up. This isn't complicated. You're making it complicated. Trevor stood too. I'm not trying to argue. Then don't argue, she snapped. Her voice, normally warm, charming, persuasive, was cold. Final. Almost threatening. Trevor knew he wasn't just resisting a document. He was resisting her will, her control, her plan. And Meghan didn't like resistance. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Trevor, I need you to understand something. He swallowed. Okay, I can't have unpredictability in my life, she said. Not now. Not with everything I'm building. I need a partner who supports me completely. Someone who is stable, reliable, and aligned. Aligned. Again. She touched his arm. I'm asking you to step up, she whispered. Not push back. Trevor felt his chest tighten. This wasn't love. This was pressure disguised as intimacy. But Meghan wasn't done. Not even close. She reached into her bag again, and Trevor's heart dropped. Another paper. Not the expectations agreement. Not the silence clause. Something else. She placed it on top of the folder, her fingers tapping it twice. This, she said ominously, is the non-negotiable part. Trevor's blood ran cold. If the expectations agreement was her attempt to control the relationship, if the silence clause was her attempt to control information, then this new document was something even darker. I need you to sign all of it, she said. Trevor stared at her, speechless. And I need you to sign it before the wedding. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Meghan leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. Because if you can't commit to this, then we have a problem. Trevor felt the room shift, the air heavy, his future collapsing inward. This wasn't a conversation. It was a warning, and he suddenly realized. If he didn't sign, if he pushed back, if he questioned her, Meghan would walk. This wasn't about love. It was about control. But what was in the non-negotiable document? What could possibly be more intense than a behavioral contract and a silence clause? Trevor didn't know yet, but he would, because when he opened that final sheet of paper, the truth would hit him with a force that made the first two agreements feel like child's play, and it would make their friends, their families, even their lawyers, question everything. Because the non-negotiable part was the first real glimpse into a side of Meghan that Trevor wasn't ready to see. And once he saw it, he could never unsee it. If you've ever watched someone you love get pulled into a relationship that slowly chips away at who they are, then you already understand what Trevor's friends felt. That mixture of confusion, alarm, frustration, and helplessness. That gnawing sense that something is wrong. But you can't quite put your finger on it, and you don't want to cross the line that pushes your friend further into denial. That's where Trevor's closest circle now found themselves. They had watched the envelope. They had watched the silence clause. They had watched the expectations agreement. But they didn't yet know the worst part, the non-negotiable document Meghan had demanded he sign before the wedding. All they knew was that Trevor was shrinking, bit by bit, week by week, change by change. The man they once knew, funny, confident, easygoing, warm, was becoming someone else. Someone quieter, hesitant, nervous. Someone who seemed constantly afraid of saying the wrong thing. It didn't happen overnight. Control never does. It creeps. It slips. It grows. It takes root. And Trevor didn't notice that it was happening to him. But his friends did. It started one night at a dinner gathering. A casual one. No celebration. No special occasion. Just Trevor, Meghan, and a few close friends sharing takeout and wine at a friend's apartment in Studio City. The vibe was light, at first. People joked. They shared stories from work. Someone pulled out an old photo album and teased Trevor about his scruffy college beard. For a moment, it felt like the old days before Meghan entered his life. Then Meghan corrected him. Not once. Not twice. Several times. Corrected the way he told a story. Corrected his memory of events. Corrected the punchline. It wasn't playful. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't couple banter. It was sharp, precise, pointed, like she was training him to speak correctly. At one point, when Trevor lightly exaggerated a detail, something he'd always done for comedic effect, Meghan cut him off mid-sentence. That's not accurate, she said flatly. Trevor blinked, caught off guard. It's just a joke, Meg. We agreed on being truthful, she said. The room fell silent. No one knew what she meant. Trevor knew. The agreement. The rules. But he didn't dare explain that to his friends. He just nodded, embarrassed. The conversation moved on, but the air shifted. His friends exchanged glances, subtle, careful, but unmistakable. The kind of silent communication that says, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" As the night went on, they noticed more. At one point, Trevor offered to help clean up. Meghan said no, but not gently. More like, "I don't want you breaking the system I'm building." When Trevor laughed loudly at a joke someone cracked, she rested her hand on his knee. Not lovingly, but as a cue, a reminder. And he instantly toned down his laughter as if she had adjusted a volume knob. Later, as they were saying goodbye, someone suggested an impromptu beach trip for the following weekend. Before Trevor could even respond, Meghan answered for him. "We'll see. It depends on our schedule." Our schedule. Not his. Not theirs. Hers. And Trevor didn't argue. He just nodded. Trevor's friends watched all of this in disbelief. They had seen controlling partners before. Everyone has. But this was something different. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't insecurity. This wasn't possessiveness. This was management. One of his closest friends, Chris, waited until Meghan went to the bathroom before pulling Trevor aside. "Hey, man, can I ask you something?" Chris said, trying to keep his tone casual. "Yeah, sure. You okay?" Trevor frowned. "What do you mean?" Chris hesitated. He didn't want to offend him, but he also didn't want to lie. "I don't know," he said softly. "You just seem off. Different. Like you're walking on eggshells. Trevor's face tightened. It's nothing. Is it, Meghan? No. Because. Chris, Trevor said sharply, it's fine. That was the end of it, for that night. But the tension lingered. Over the next few weeks, more signs piled up. There was the time Trevor skipped a guy's poker night because Meghan said they needed to review their communication goals. And then there was the moment that changed everything. Another friend, Brandon, invited Trevor to grab drinks one Friday night. Trevor said yes. He sounded excited, even relieved. But when he arrived, everything about him looked wrong. His smile was forced. His shoulders were tense. His energy was drained. He wasn't Trevor. He was a version of himself edited down to something safer. Something smaller. After 2 beers, Trevor confessed something that made Brandon's heart sink. She wants me to sign one more document, he said quietly. Brandon froze. One more? Yeah. She said it's non-negotiable. Non-negotiable for what? The marriage, Trevor said. For us. For us. Brandon repeated. Trevor, that's not normal. Trevor looked down. I know. Then why are you considering it? Because, Trevor swallowed hard. Because if I don't sign, I think she'll leave. And I don't want to lose her. Brandon slammed his drink down a little harder than he meant to. Trevor, he said firmly. A woman who threatens to walk unless you obey doesn't love you. Trevor didn't answer. And that silence, the way he avoided eye contact, the way he held his breath as if afraid to inhale the truth, told Brandon everything he needed to know. Meghan had him. Emotionally. Psychologically. Strategically. Trevor wasn't choosing anymore. He was complying. For the rest of the night, Trevor's friends gently pushed him to reconsider, to slow down, to think carefully. But every time they raised a red flag, Trevor dismissed it with one sentence. You guys don't understand her. But the truth? They understood her better than he did. The next warning came from someone unexpected, Trevor's older cousin, Lisa, one of the most grounded people in his life. She had met Meghan twice. She wasn't dazzled by the charm or the glamour. She had a sharp instinct about people. One afternoon, she invited Trevor to lunch. The moment he walked in, she knew something was wrong. His posture, his energy, the way he scanned the restaurant as if making sure Meghan wasn't watching. They sat down, ordered food, chatted casually. Then Lisa leaned forward. Trevor, she said gently, are you happy? Trevor froze. Why would you ask that? You're not glowing, she said. You're not excited. You're tense. You look tired. You look managed. He swallowed. He didn't deny it. So she continued. Happiness doesn't make you smaller, she said. It makes you bigger. You should be expanding, Trevor, not shrinking. Trevor's eyes watered, and he quickly wiped them. I love her, he whispered. Love isn't the question, she said softly. Control is. He shook his head. You're wrong. I hope I am, she replied. But if someone changes you before the marriage, what will they do after? Her words hit him hard. Harder than any friend's warning. Harder than Chris's questions. Harder than Brandon's concerns. Because deep down, Trevor knew she was right. Something was changing inside him. Something he couldn't explain. Something he couldn't stop. But he wouldn't walk away. Not yet. Because Meghan wasn't finished. She wasn't done adjusting him. Shaping him. Rewriting him. She had one more demand. One more rule. One more line in her system of control. And this next demand? It wasn't hidden behind therapy language. It wasn't disguised as a boundary. It wasn't framed as a communication tool. It was clear. Simple. Terrifying. And it was the moment Trevor finally realized Meghan wasn't just preparing for marriage. She was preparing for power. Everything his friends had warned about, everything he had ignored, everything he had pushed aside, it was about to make sense. Because the next rule Meghan introduced wasn't about communication, or expectations, or silence. It was something far more controlling. Something that changed the direction of their relationship forever. Something Trevor would later call the line I should have walked away on. He didn't walk away. Instead, he stepped deeper, and what Meghan demanded next would make even his most skeptical friends say, oh, this woman was planning something. If you've ever felt the weight of being unable to speak, truly speak, then you already understand the terror inside Trevor when Meghan introduced rule number 2. The moment when love stops being a connection and becomes a contract. When trust stops being natural and becomes something you're forced to prove. When silence stops being a choice and becomes a condition. Because Meghan's second rule wasn't just controlling. It wasn't just intrusive. It wasn't just bizarre. It was the clearest sign yet that she expected problems. Problems she wanted to control long before they ever happened. And for Trevor, this was the moment everything in the relationship tilted. This was the moment love began to taste like fear. It happened a few nights after his friends tried to intervene. Trevor came home tired. He'd had a long day, and all he wanted was something simple: dinner, laughter, and a peaceful evening. Meghan was already sitting on the couch, legs crossed, phone in hand. He kissed her cheek, sat beside her, and tried to relax. But Meghan didn't look at him. She didn't smile. She didn't greet him warmly. She simply said, "We need to finish our conversation." The dread hit him instantly. "What conversation?" he asked, though he already knew. "The agreement," she said. "The structure. And the clause." The clause. Like it was a monumental piece of legislation. Like he was a senator being briefed. Like their marriage was a bill she needed him to sign off on. Trevor inhaled slowly. "Meg, I just got home." "This won't take long," she said. That wasn't a comfort. It was a warning disguised as efficiency. She took out the single folded sheet, the silence clause, and held it between two fingers like it was sacred. "Or dangerous." "Do you understand why we need this?" she asked. Trevor looked at her carefully. "Why don't you tell me?" Her jaw tightened. Not in anger. No, Meghan was far too controlled for open anger. This was calculation. The tightening of someone preparing to explain something she already believed you should accept. "Because the entertainment industry is brutal," she said, "and I can't have private issues becoming public." Trevor blinked. "But I would never." "It's not about intention," she cut in. "It's about protection." Protection. She used that word so often it stopped sounding like a positive. Protection for whom? "Meg, I'm not the press," he said gently. "I'm your fiancé. And you need to act like it," she said. Her tone wasn't sharp. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was cold, flat, detached. The tone of someone who has already decided how the conversation will end. Trevor looked down at the clause again. No discussing conflicts with friends. No sharing personal frustrations. No venting about the relationship to family. No speaking to coworkers about challenges. In other words, suffer silently. Absorb quietly. Don't you dare question her publicly. "This isn't normal," he finally whispered. "It's necessary," she replied. "But why does everything have to be formal? Structured? Planned? Why can't we just talk to each other like normal people?" Meghan leaned back, studying him. "That's the problem," she said. "Talking usually leads to venting. Venting leads to exaggeration. Exaggeration leads to misunderstandings. And misunderstandings lead to drama." She said it like she had memorized the sentence. Like she had rehearsed it. Like she had used it before. "Meg, I can't promise to never talk to anyone about anything that upset me." "That's not." "You can," she interrupted. "And you will." Trevor felt his stomach drop. "Meg, I need someone I can trust," she said. "I am trustworthy." "Are you?" she asked calmly. "Because last week you told Chris that I was being intense." Trevor froze. She knew. She knew about his conversation. Even though it was private. Even though he never raised his voice. Even though he thought he was safe. "How did you?" "Because he told his girlfriend," Meghan said. "And she told someone else, and it got back to me." Trevor's breath caught in his throat. She was tracking him. Tracking conversations. Tracking comments. Tracking private moments. And this wasn't paranoia. It was happening. "You have to stop talking to people about us," she said. "I won't tolerate that." Tolerate. A word people use for misbehaving children. Not for partners. Trevor swallowed hard. "Meg, people talk to their friends. That's normal." "Not in my life," she said. "Not in my plan." "Your plan." There it was again. The thing she never said openly, but always implied. Trevor wasn't building a life with her. He was being placed into hers. Meghan took the silence clause from him and laid it flat on the coffee table. "I'm going to explain each part," she said. "And you're going to listen. Not discuss. Not negotiate. Not compromise. Listen." Trevor nodded silently. Because what else could he do? He felt too off balance. Too confused. Too afraid of triggering something bigger. She cleared her throat and began. "Number 1. You will not share our disagreements with anyone. That includes friends, co-workers, and extended family." Trevor opened his mouth. She raised a finger. "No interrupting." She continued. "Number 2. You will not express negative emotions publicly." Trevor blinked. What is that even? Trevor, she said sharply, don't interrupt. His mouth closed. Number 3. You will not disparage me in any form. Not verbally, not through implication, not through tone. Tone. Even tone was now regulated. Number 4. If you have frustrations, they are to be brought directly to me at the designated time. Designated time? Trevor whispered. Sunday night check-ins, she said matter-of-factly. This felt like a management meeting, not a marriage. Number 5. If you break any of these terms, I reserve the right to consult a third party regarding the health of the relationship. Trevor frowned. What third party? A professional, Meghan said. A therapist? If needed, she replied. Or someone else. Someone else? Who? Her friends? Her PR team? Her future career strategists? Trevor's mind spiraled. Meg, you're acting like I'm some kind of risk. She paused. Then she said the sentence that later echoed in Trevor's mind for years. Everyone is a risk. Not everyone is human. Not everyone makes mistakes. No, everyone is a risk. Trevor could barely breathe. I love you, he whispered, desperate for some warmth. I know, she said, which is why you'll sign. The way she said it, casually, confidently, made the back of Trevor's neck prickle. You've been talking to people about us, she continued, and that stops tonight. She tapped the paper twice. This is the boundary. Boundary. Another self-help word twisted into something dark. Trevor's voice trembled. Meg, why are you making this so strict? Because I need stability, she said. And I will create it. There was no softness in her tone. No vulnerability. No openness. Just certainty. Unshakable, immovable certainty. Trevor stood up, pacing slightly. I feel like I'm being suffocated. You're being dramatic. No, he said louder. No, I'm not. You're asking me to give up my voice. I'm asking you to be loyal. That's not loyalty, he said. That's silence. Exactly, she replied calmly. Silence is loyalty. Trevor felt sick. He sat back down, burying his face in his hands. I don't know how to react to this. You'll adjust, she said. If you want us to work, you will. He looked up. And if I don't? Meghan didn't answer immediately. She stared at him. Long. Cold. Unwavering. Then she said quietly, then we'll have a problem. There it was. Not a threat, but a promise. Trevor felt something inside him collapse. A realization. A truth he didn't want to face. Meghan didn't want partnership. She wanted compliance. She wanted control. She wanted silence. He tried one last time. Meg, I love you, but this feels wrong. She tilted her head. If you love me, she said softly, you'll do what's right for us. Trevor shook his head. This isn't us. This is you deciding everything. I'm deciding what works, she said. And if you don't see that yet, you will. He felt the walls closing in. You're asking too much, he whispered. Meghan leaned forward, her voice low and chillingly calm. I'm asking for the bare minimum. The bare minimum. Silence. Control. Obedience. If you sign, she added, we'll be fine. And if I don't, she didn't blink. Then maybe you're not the person I thought you were. That line. That weaponized disappointment. The emotional bomb disguised as introspection. Trevor broke. He nodded. Weakly. Reluctantly. Defeated. I'll sign, he whispered. And he did. But that signature wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something worse. Because shortly after signing rule number 2, Trevor stumbled upon something Meghan never intended him to see. A slip-up. An accident. A digital breadcrumb that exposed everything. An email. A private thread. A message that revealed Meghan's real plan in her own words. And once Trevor read it, the entire relationship finally made sense. And it destroyed him. Because the hidden email didn't just explain her behavior. It exposed her strategy. Some relationship truths hit you slowly, like a dim light gradually turning on. Others hit you like a brick to the chest, sudden, violent, undeniable. For Trevor Engelson, the truth arrived in the form of a single, unexpected email. A slip-up Meghan never intended. A message she thought she'd hidden, deleted, erased from existence. But as life loves to remind us, nothing stays buried forever. If the silence clause made Trevor uneasy, the hidden email would become the moment everything clicked. The moment he understood the kind of marriage he was stepping into, the kind of woman he was marrying, and the kind of control she intended to have. And once he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. This was the first crack in the image. The first glimpse behind the curtain, the moment the actress stepped out of character, and the real Meghan Markle appeared. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. Trevor was sitting on the patio drinking coffee. Meghan was getting ready for a meeting. Yes, a meeting, because every moment of her life was scheduled, planned, controlled. She lived on timelines like other people lived on caffeine. She asked Trevor to print something for her, a set of audition sides, notes, and a schedule. He nodded, walked to her home office, and opened her laptop. Normally, Meghan kept it locked, password protected, guarded like a state secret. But today, she forgot to close the screen, forgot to lock the device, forgot to hide her trail. It was a crack in the armor, a rare moment of human error, something Meghan almost never allowed herself. Trevor tapped the trackpad. The screen lit up. An email tab was still open. He didn't mean to look. He didn't plan to snoop. He didn't go searching for anything. But the subject line caught him immediately. Relationship management strategy. Relationship management strategy. 3 words that had no business existing together. Unless you're planning something, structuring something, or preparing to navigate someone instead of love them. Trevor froze. He thought, surely this isn't about us. Surely she's talking about a character, a role, a script. But the preview text crushed that hope. He's sweet but lacks discipline. If I don't set rules early, it will affect everything down the line. Trevor's heart dropped. He clicked. He shouldn't have. But how could he not? What he saw next would stay with him for the rest of his life. The email was between Meghan and a close friend, someone Trevor didn't know well, but someone Meghan trusted profoundly. Here are the guidelines I'm implementing, Meghan wrote. I need him aligned with the image we're building. We're building. Not we're becoming. Not we're growing. Not we're shaping. Building. Like a brand. A company. A controlled project. Trevor scrolled. It got worse. I've learned from past relationships that instability comes from letting a man feel too free. I need structure. I need consistency. I need someone who won't make mistakes that reflect badly on me. Reflect badly on me. He felt a knot form in his stomach. Mistakes were not mistakes to Meghan. They were risks. Liabilities. Threats to her image. He kept reading. If I put boundaries in early, he will adapt. If I let things slide now, he'll think he can keep expressing himself the way he does. Expressing himself the way he does. It sounded like she was talking about a pet, a child, a project she was training, not the man she loved. Trevor felt his throat tighten, but he couldn't stop. I know he won't like the silence clause or the expectations agreement, but it's necessary. I need control in the relationship. I can't have surprises. Control. There it was. The word he had been tiptoeing around for weeks. The word she never said out loud, but wove into everything she did. Control. Trevor scrolled further, hands shaking now. Meghan's friend had replied, "Isn't this a bit much? He seems like a good guy." And Meghan responded, "Good guys are the easiest to shape." Trevor stopped breathing. Shape, shape, shape. He felt a wave of nausea. His stomach twisted. His hands went cold. He read the next line 3 times, hoping the words would change, hoping he was misreading, hoping it was a joke. But they didn't change. If I want the future I'm planning, I can't let him derail it. He needs to understand his role. Understand his role. Not equal partner. Not husband. Not partner. Role. Trevor's pulse hammered in his ears. A role in her life. A part in her script. A supporting character. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife deeper, he found the sentence that shattered him. I'm not marrying for love alone. Love is replaceable. Stability is not. Replaceable. She saw love, his love, as interchangeable, as something she could swap out like a pair of shoes. Trevor's hands trembled so violently, he almost dropped the laptop. He kept reading only because he was too shocked to stop. And if he becomes a problem later, I'll have leverage. That's why the agreements are important. Leverage. The agreements weren't boundaries. They were leverage. Tools. Power. Everything suddenly made sense. The envelope. The expectations. The silence clause. The non-negotiable document. This wasn't preparation. This wasn't communication. This wasn't healthy structure. This was control. Strategy. Planning. He scrolled again. Meghan wrote, "He's emotional. He's expressive. He talks. If he doesn't learn discipline, he'll embarrass me. Embarrass me. Embarrass." Everything was about her. Not them. Not him. Her. Trevor felt tears burning, but blinked them back. His heart felt like it was splitting open, not because Meghan didn't love him the way he loved her, but because she didn't love him at all. Not truly. Not in the way that matters. He kept reading, almost in a trance. We'll see how he reacts. If he fights me on it, then I know he's not husband material. A test. Their relationship was a test. Not a partnership. A test. And Trevor didn't even know he was taking it. Meghan's next line made him feel cold all over. And if he signs everything willingly, then I know he's useful. Useful. Not valued. Not cherished. Not adored. Useful. Trevor's chest tightened. He felt physically ill. Every moment from the last few months suddenly replayed in his mind like a twisted puzzle finally snapping into place.